Hey everybody, I'm Curtis.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is Love at First Fright. He decorates cupcakes for a living.
And she catches little snails and harvests their mucus.
They have a budget of $3.5 million.
They want to be in the heart of New York City, but also in the calm neighborhood of the suburbs outside of New York City.
Yeah, they want to be in the they want to experience the thriving downtown nightlife of New York City. His must-haves are a basement. She needs
8 acres of land.
Yeah, we watch a lot of HGTV stuff.
Surprising no one.
Yeah, no.
We talk so often about our reality TV that we're watching.
And then when we don't have any new Netflix things to watch, then we put on HGTV and then judge the people in there. But we have been doing some home decor stuff ourselves. Like the last couple of weeks have just been like a flurry of like, what if we got a bench to put outside so
it actually looked nice.
Front door, so it like looked appealing.
Yeah.
And we bought some curtains.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing of like, we got this house right at the start of the first COVID lockdowns.
Yeah.
And so for like 2+ years, nobody came over because we were all social distancing.
Yeah.
And so now we're weirdly like in our nesting stage as if we just bought this place.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm like we're playing like, you know, we're losers, so we haven't had like people come over all that often, but we're about to start having people come over more often
to play D&D, which is not something a loser would do.
No, that's pretty exclusively to losers, I think. But anyway, no, we were excited about it, but we're also like, oh, we should like make it not just like a hovel.
Yeah. Yep. But it's fun. It is weird because I think I just became like blind to my surroundings, so I wasn't even aware of like how much better it could be. But
well,
then
it was like a functionality thing, right? Like we were like, oh, we can live in this.
Yeah. But then now that we've done these things, I'm just like, oh yes, look, my beautiful curtains.
Yeah, I know. Like I'm joking. We
and
did
my extra storage.
Yeah, we did buy curtains, but like it made the room feel different, and we bought some like picture frames and we hung up art that we've had since we first started
dating. Yeah.
And we constantly were like, oh, we should get frames for these so we can put them
and
up. It was from we saw a couple silent movies.
Yeah,
that's a double feature, and they had a band there playing
doing the
live score
music.
of the music for the movies. It was Nosferatu and
the
Doctor, the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yeah. We have like an art theater here in town that does like special events like this sometimes, and it was great.
Every time I talk about that movie, it's really hard for me to not say Dr. Calamari. And that's a different movie.
That's a really different movie. Yeah. That's the parody.
Yeah. But no, I think it's really funny because we went like home decor shopping. We had like a weekend day off and we were like, let's get up early. Let's go hit up all the big stores for home decor stuff. And we got to all of them. And I think at each one of them, we like would turn to the other and be like, so what are we looking for? And it was just like, I don't know, like just like knickknacks you put on your shelf.
Yeah.
And then
something?
Yeah. And we would like see stuff and we're like, that's cool. It's not... I don't think it's worth like $40
right
for that.
We have the perfect crossover of being frugal but also wanting nice things.
Yeah.
So basically means I'm never happy.
Yeah. We did, as like you kind of always do when you get in the mood to like change things up, we went through a lot of our stuff and like donated a bunch of like clothes and old books and stuff like that we didn't need, which was nice. I mean, it's always a pain kind of going through and doing that, just because like it's annoying. You have to like tear up a bunch of stuff, but it did like clean up a bunch of space, and we found like a bunch of storage space that, because we have to get creative. House isn't that big, but
it's a very small place.
But it's cool. It always feels good to do that, and we got innovative with some of our storage options that we had in here. So like we opened up some space. It was a fun process. We're not done. It'll
probably be ongoing.
Getting stuff. Our Amazon cart is just, because we share a Prime account, is just like every day we check it, and the other person has added like 4 more things.
Here's
in
some
there.
pillow shams.
Yeah.
Here's some.
And we're just like, all right, well, we can't go completely crazy with all of this, but
you know, it's nice to make your house feel.
Yeah, it's like real life The Sims.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
like HGTV, but for real.
Yeah. Because I know if I got into a swimming pool and then the stairs disappeared,
you would die.
Yeah.
Honestly, I probably would. I don't have a lot of upper body strength, so I don't think I could hop out.
Yeah. I could do it. I just wouldn't be happy about it.
No, yeah. Yep.
I'd just be waving my arms.
Yeah.
Snoo, snoo.
Snoo, snoo.
I think that means hello. I don't know.
Sul, sul means hello.
Sul, sul, sorry. I haven't played The Sims in a while.
Yeah, it's okay. But anyway. I was going to try to do one of your little transitions.
Everyone thinks it's easy.
And
everyone, I'm sure, listens to me do the little segues and they're like, oh, that wasn't very good. Or that wasn't high effort. You try doing it.
Yeah.
You do this.
Because I was like, speaking of simulations.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's nothing.
We watched a movie.
Which had nothing to do with simulating anything.
At all. Speaking of
interior decorating, it's kind of a thinker, because there's murders that happen inside the house and blood is all over the place.
Oh wait, I've got one. I've got one. Speaking of deaths of innocent civilians being orchestrated by an unseen force.
What?
Like in The Sims, when you take the door, you put them in a basement, you take the door away.
So you took literally the last little bit of that entire conversation about decorating a house, extrapolated The Sims, and said, there's our in.
Yep.
I see.
I think it worked.
It's fine. We're here now. Anyway, we watched Longlegs.
We went to the theater and we saw Longlegs.
Yeah, we actually, we don't always get to do this. Like, I think the first time we've done this, we watched it with a friend.
Yep. Shout out to our...
Shout out.
I don't know if you want us to say your name on the podcast, so you know who you are.
You know who you are. And you know what you did. I'm coming for you.
Yep. But that was fun. We met up opening weekend to see Longlegs. And it was a pretty full theater.
It was. We kind of talked about it the last episode of the podcast a little bit. It was the one where we got to the theater a little bit early and did it. We didn't realize it was going to be so packed out, which I think is a combination of marketing and also is a pretty good movie. But our friend had checked, because we hadn't bought tickets yet. And we had checked like earlier in the week, because we were trying to like plan out when we wanted to do this. And we were going to do the 9:45 showing of it.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like so good that they added a showing that we weren't aware of, which is partially the reason we were there like so early, is just like timing of everything.
Yeah.
It's weird. But anyway, when we did go to buy the tickets, the theater was like already full. There was, when we got the seats for the movie, every row was basically full up of people.
There were like just a few random single seats,
and then the ones up by the front, which
no one ever wants to.
No one ever wants to do that.
Honestly, why do they even have those seats?
To sell more tickets.
I guess so.
I've seen one movie in the 2 movies.
I have seen one movie in that space, and it sucked.
One of them was when Dark Knight Rises came out.
Oh.
I was still working at a movie theater,
Mhm.
and so we got to see a one-day like early screening of it, but
Nice.
it was a friends and family thing, and it was like
Right.
so packed out, and I didn't get there early enough to get good seats for it.
I gotcha.
So I was in the front and like all the way to the left, like the 3rd row back or whatever. It was still nice because I love Batman.
Mhm.
And then the other movie that I saw, which was like the front row, was when Evil Dead, the first remake
Oh, nice.
movie came out. I saw that with a couple of friends.
My
That
dad
was-
and I saw that movie in theater.
That was kind of an experience.
Yeah, you're
that,
so
I think at
close
the
to the
time, and it
violence.
might still hold the record for most blood.
I don't know if it still does, but it
It
definitely
it set the record at
it
certain
held this
point.
title of using the most fake blood in a film production.
So that was an experience,
Yeah.
sitting like in the front row for that one.
Yep.
My neck hurt.
The one time I sat in the front row, it wasn't even worth it because I saw Frankenweenie.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I had the original short Frankenweenie.
interesting.
I can't remember. It was like on a VHS. It was like a
cool.
little thing
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of it, like how Pixar or whatever used to do those little
The little
shorts
shorts.
at
Yeah.
the
They still do
beginning.
that.
My favorite. Oh, they do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't watch
Basically
Pixar
every
movies.
Pixar movie that's like people look forward to that.
I didn't know. I like haven't watched a Pixar movie and I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
The one I like most remember is the old guy playing chess in the park.
Yeah.
And
that's
then
a classic.
the reveal is that he's playing against himself.
Mm-hmm.
I remember.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Rich Farm remembers.
Anyway,
Anyway.
let's talk about the actual movie we
Yeah.
saw.
Yeah, so we can get into it here. Of course, Longlegs is a new release, so it's a 2024 horror movie. Some people have said it's more of a crime thriller. I think these are kind of arbitrary distinctions, but it's a horror crime thriller with some supernatural thrown in, so if that helps.
And a little bit of comedy.
And
Yeah.
a musical too.
And a musical. True.
Yep.
One big number.
Yep. But it was written and directed by Osgood Perkins, sometimes called Oz Perkins. You may have seen him before. He's an actor, but he's also a director. He did The Blackcoat's Daughter a few years back.
And sometimes he hangs out in closets and he just like pops out in the middle of the night and he says, "Hey, I'm making a movie." Then he gets back in there.
What is that referencing?
Huh? Oh, nothing. You said you may have seen him.
Oh, okay.
Like he like hangs around. He's like a little gremlin.
Yeah. He's the
just,
Hat
like,
Man.
Yeah, he just kind of you take a little too much NyQuil.
Yeah,
he's like,
and you see Osgood Perkins.
I'm here.
Yeah, but also Osgood Perkins, if you didn't know this fun little fact, is the son of Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates in the original Psycho. He talked a lot about how his childhood and his relationship to his parents kind of influence his filmmaking and his stories. So I think that's an interesting little detail. But yes, just came out, written and directed by him. We've got a good cast. We have Maika Monroe as our lead, who is Lee Harker. She's an FBI agent.
Mm-hmm.
You may remember her from It Follows,
Mm-hmm.
or from the other closet in your house where she pops out and she says, "It's following you."
Sometimes it's the same closet. Sometimes they're
Yeah.
not in it together.
No, they trade around.
Yeah, you think you're safe because
it's like Scooby Doo.
Yeah, you think you're safe because Oz Perkins didn't pop out of it, and then
Mhm.
Maika Monroe pops out and she says,
Just like
"I'm
that.
also in here."
Yep, me too. And then we have the wonderful, amazing, my national treasure, Nicolas Cage.
For the longest time, not a meme, not a joke. My family can attest to this, specifically my brother, because I've talked to him about this. I love Nicolas Cage. It's my
What's not to love?
personal mission to see every Nicolas Cage movie. I've fallen behind in years.
Okay, we gotta catch up.
There was a point that I had seen like a lot of them.
Yeah.
To be fair, he also stars in a lot of them.
He does a lot of projects.
So, like,
yeah.
it's hard to keep up sometimes.
Yep.
I love Nick Cage movies, especially where they just let him do his thing.
Oh, and in this one, he was just a weird little guy, and it was perfect.
It was very good.
So he's kind of playing the main antagonist.
The titular
Longlegs. That's his, serial killer pseudonym. We also have a couple other names in here. We have Blair Underwood as Agent Carter, who is Lee's superior officer. We also have Alicia Witt playing Ruth Harker, who's Lee's mother.
Yep.
And then I wouldn't necessarily say she's a main character, but I did want to name drop her because she was important to the film, was Kiernan Shipka, who she was really only in one scene, but she plays Carrie Ann Camera, who is up until that point the only known survivor of
the Longlegs murders.
Yeah. That's our cast. Honestly, great performances all around. I thought everybody was putting in the work.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. I think this movie is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
The opening is pretty uncomfortable.
Yep.
And it kind of runs with that, like, feeling of being uncomfortable for the majority of the movie. I think towards the very end, it kind of switches that up, and it kind of goes more like, I hesitate to say traditional, but like traditional horror, where you get more of like the scares you might be expecting. A lot of the movie, though, is, I've seen comparisons to Silence of the Lambs.
Yep.
It's like this generation Silence of the Lambs. I don't know how well that holds up necessarily.
I think it's a decent comparison,
but I think where it like most accurately that comparison holds up is that it is a slow burn.
Yeah. And
thing.
There's kind of, it starts out as just we have an agent doing an investigation, and then it kind of spirals into something bigger.
Yeah.
I also felt like it kind of, I was thinking about this earlier today. To me, it kind of gave Sinister vibes in that it like presents itself as being about like a serial killer, but then things slowly become like more supernatural as it goes on.
Sure.
Which kind of gave me those vibes of, Ethan Hawke thinking it's just a series of murders, but then it's so much more than that.
That's fair.
If you like either of those movies, you may be interested in Longlegs if you haven't seen it. I think it's worth a watch. And honestly, I don't normally say this because I just don't care that much, but I think this is a movie that benefits from seeing it in theaters because it has really good sound design, and being in that environment where you're like surrounded on all sides, it's booming and everything, I think is a lot more immersive. So I would recommend going out and seeing this while it's still in theater.
Yeah, especially if the audience you go in there with is like...
Is chill. Yeah.
There was some concerns, I think, right when the movie started because like a big group of young adult / teenagers walked in and they were being kind of loud.
Yeah.
But when the movie like actually started,
everybody chilled out.
Everyone was good, which is great because while the sound design is really good, that also it's also similar to jazz, right? It's about the notes you don't play. Yeah. There's a lot of points in this movie where there is no like score going. Yeah, there's no like sound
drawn out
silences, and so like it's really impactful when these moments aren't spoiled by people like snickering because they think there's something funny happened or whatever.
Right.
Which you could argue that if that's what people are doing, then maybe the point of the scene isn't coming across as well, but whatever anyway.
Yeah. But just to give you a little brief plot synopsis, Longlegs follows FBI agent Lee Harker, who has been assigned to an unsolved serial killer case that takes an unexpected turn, revealing evidence of the occult. Harker discovers a personal connection to the killer and must stop him before he strikes again. So that's Longlegs.
Yeah.
And kind of the interesting thing about this series of murders is that they have linked them all to this person that they only know as Longlegs, but only because of notes that are being left behind at the scene. There's actually nothing to suggest that he was physically present and committed the murders, because it seems like the murders happen within the family, like a murder-suicide, but they know, because he leaves this trail, that there is this Longlegs character that is at every scene. And that's why they can't figure it out, because it's like, why is the dad losing it and killing the family and Longlegs is there?
I said earlier, the opening to the movie is really uncomfortable. They do this aspect ratio where you're inside of a car that is moving.
Yeah.
And it is being filmed on this square aspect ratio, so it's not like fully open, and it looks old, and you don't see the person driving the vehicle's just moving, and then when it pulls up to the house, and this is where like the first like creepy stuff really starts to happen.
They really just got it out there right away.
We start to get shots outside of the car. We see a young girl inside of a house, and she sees the car pull up. And then she goes outside, and when she starts to approach the car, she hears a sound from behind her, the house that she just left.
Cuckoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when she turns around, you can see a figure kind of dip back behind the house, and you're like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And then this is when we get to see Longlegs for the first time, but they do it in a really interesting way where we only see like the first third of Nicolas Cage's face, so like basically just to above the mouth.
His mouth to like mid-chest is all we see of him.
And it's kind of like from the little girl's perspective, but she's clearly looking at the face, but we just don't get to see the face. Yeah. He's talking to her, and then he says "Oh, but I wore my long legs today."
Yep.
And this is like the first jump scare, which is a note I think we'll make about it as we talk about the movie. But he dips down in frame really quickly to like get eye level.
A flash of him, but it's not really enough as an audience to like
fully take in what he looks like
process the image. But we know that he's alarming.
Yeah. He's kind of a weird little guy.
Yeah, he's a weird little guy for sure.
And then we cut from there and we get into like the movie proper. Like the next thing we see is Lee Harker at like a interview thing or a briefing thing.
Yeah, it's a briefing
for a case. And it was slightly confusing because you think, oh, okay, they're talking about this.
I think that was intentional. They immediately go into like, okay, we're going to find this guy. We have reason to believe that he's living in this area, so we're going to go door to door the old-fashioned way. And you kind of think like, oh, they're on to Longlegs.
Well, we're starting it from this place, right? Yeah. Like we might catch him really early, and the rest of it is like,
something else.
You know, very Hannibal Lecter.
Right.
You know.
So I kind of thought the same thing, but it's
fava beans.
Oh, okay.
Clarice.
I thought you said enchanting, and I was like, where did that come from? But anyway, importantly about Lee Harker, right away we get, as we kind of get introduced to her, she is very socially awkward and dry and stilted. And she kind of seems like she's always in her own world. Like she has a partner that they're, you know, because they're going out and doing these door-to-doors, and he's trying to chit-chat with her and, you know, just like laugh or whatever. And it just gives him absolutely nothing, just totally flat affect. When they pull up to this neighborhood where they're assigned to, you know, go look, he kind of, again, because he knows how she is, he's like, maybe I should be the one that goes to the door and talks to people so that you don't fucking weird him out. Yeah. So they get separated, but she feels this intense...
It's like a pull. Like, she can't explain it. And later in the movie, they joke about her being, like, psychic or something like that. But, like, the whole time he's talking with the person at the first house they pull up to, she is, like, staring at this other house. And when he finishes up, he comes back, and she says, he's in that house. And
the guy's like... No,
he's
not.
And she's like convinced, and there's nothing about the house that like would suggest
it's kind
anything.
Of a creepy neighborhood where every house looks literally exactly the same, weird. And they're all like, they're all shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, they're very cookie cutter and like weird. But anyway, he's like, all right, I'll go talk to this one, you know, just to like kind of settle it or whatever. So he walks up to the door and she hangs back a little bit, but she does approach enough to be able to hear. And this was probably for me one of the most effective scenes in the movie, because you literally don't expect it.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. He knocks on the door and then you hear like stomping as though like someone's annoyed when he came to the door. And again, we're primed that something might happen because she's like, he's in this house. Yeah. And we think this is going to be Longlegs. So the person answers the door and he says, "Hey, we're in the neighborhood investigating. Have you seen?" And then you just hear a gunshot go off. And
his face is fully taken off.
Yeah, he just gets shot. The agent just gets
immediately
shot.
Dead.
And Lee's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And so then you hear footsteps like go away and she goes in after him.
And there's a very tense scene where she's like clearing the house and there's all this plastic.
Yeah, it's like plastic all over. It looks like a serial killer lives in here.
Yeah.
And so you're like, this is wild as a start.
Yeah.
And then she finds the guy. He's just sitting on the bed. And
with his hands up.
Yeah, with his hands up. And she calls it in. And that kind of gets resolved. But this is how we set up that she has like some kind of ability.
Right.
And
this is
also,
what kind of gets the FBI more interested in her.
Yes. And it leads to how she gets assigned to the Longlegs case. Because she's able to close in, find this person, and basically resolve it. And she's a rookie to the FBI. She's like new to the force and everything.
Yeah.
And so they tap her to help with the Longlegs case after this because like it's a dead end for them. Like we said, the only evidence to Longlegs being involved in these cases and connecting them all is the note, which is written in code except for the word Longlegs at the bottom of each note, and they have no idea
they're
what to
at
do.
His mercy because he's purposefully leaving that for them. So you know, they only know what he's allowing them to know, basically. She gets pulled in, and the psychic stuff is kind of, I mean, I think it's open to interpretation. You know, some of the people kind of give her a hard time about it and think that it's like overblown or whatever, and some people are like, "Yo, you're psychic," and she definitely gets these like flashes and images, and she gets headaches and things. So there's a lot throughout the film to kind of support that there's something going on deeper in her mind. There are a lot of scenes we talked about where like they're kind of designed to make you feel really uncomfortable. After she gets tapped to do the Longlegs case, she ends up going back to her house after investigating some stuff. And this is one of the more uncomfortable scenes in the movie. She comes home. We know like something's up and something's weird. Yeah. She comes home and she calls her mom on the phone. And they have a really weird conversation. Really weird conversation. And then she I think when she sees somebody outside, right? She hears a knock on the door. Yes, that's right. Sorry. She hears a knock on the door and it's like really loud, really aggressive. Yeah, someone like banging on the door. And so she goes and looks and nobody's there. Then when she's like walking through her house, it's one of those like, if you notice this about like horror movies and like the main character when they live in a house, there's always a giant wall made up exclusively of windows to be able to look out into woods. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist in real life. It does. It's a very scenic thing, and also people aren't caught in like weird horror movies all the time. Sure. But it's like horror movie stuff only happens to those people. So they can have the scene where they're like in their house perfectly well lit in the middle of the night, and then they see like a weird shadowy figure outside. And then they do the stupidest thing imaginable, because she is an FBI agent and could just call for like anybody to maybe come like look at this and help. She decides to go outside and look for this person that she sees out there. And when she does, we see a figure go into her house. And then when she's out there and she doesn't see anything, she turns around and she sees the person in her house. So then she goes back in and look. And when she finishes looking through her house, at the desk she was sitting at talking to her mom, there is a letter that has been placed on her desk addressed to her, and it's from Longlegs. So the idea being that was Longlegs in the house doing that. And so this is where she starts to like really crack the code. She like figures out because he leaves with the note that he leaves her, he has both words and codes, so it gives her enough that she can kind of create a cipher.
Yeah.
Because she knows what certain letters are. So she's able to go through all the files and
yeah. She starts doing all of this, and then like everyone's like, how did you do that? But there's a threat in the one that she gets that says you can't tell them how you got this, otherwise I'll kill your mom.
Yeah.
Kind of
only it's said in just like the worst.
Oh yeah, it's pretty gruesome how it is worded. This whole scene though, especially after Longlegs has been in the house and she gets the letter and she decides she's going to investigate. The way that they film this is it put me so on edge for the entire time. So she's at the desk and the camera is, imagine it's set kind of into the wall, aimed at her, but you can see this kind of wide shot behind her, like out into her kitchen. And then the office that she in has like 2 doors, and one leads into the kitchen and one leads into another space, and you can kind of see both spaces.
Yeah.
And they're both dark because she's has the lights on in there. And we know Longlegs was just in the house, and she's like fully engrossed in this letter. And I'm like, what are you doing? Stop doing this. He got in.
Yep.
And I know he tricked you to get in, but like, you don't know. You don't know what he can do.
Sure.
And the whole time, it's just, I'm glued to looking into the room behind her, because I'm like, is there going to be something that just moves across?
Yeah.
Is it going to like cut from looking at the letter to like that wide shot again, and then he's like just behind her or something?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They do a lot of that, like actually withholding the scary thing and allowing you to just kind of stew in the tension and anticipation, which I think is really effective. And I know it really worked for me. Like, I feel like I was just tense the whole movie because one thing I can definitely praise about this film is the direction was very intentional.
Yeah.
Like, nothing in frame was there by accident. It was all very purposeful, including what isn't in frame.
Yep.
And, I think that that's startling in its own way, because we've talked about this before. It's like when you over-explain the thing, it loses its scare factor. Yeah. But when you just let us see a dark, dim, shadowy doorway, and we can kind of be like, am I seeing something in there?
Is there a guy in there? Yeah. They use this to great effect, because like, as much as I'm sitting here being like, is there something that's going to move across it? There are also plenty of scenes where there is something in the background.
Yeah.
So to kind of like get into it, and this is the real big spoilery thing of it, Longlegs is not just a serial killer. There is a big supernatural element to this.
Yes.
Specifically, we talked about the occult in the description of the movie, but it's like Satan and the devil.
He's a worshiper of Satan.
There are several scenes in the movie where behind Lee, in the background, sometimes it's for a split second, sometimes it's more prominent, you can see the silhouette of the devil watching her.
Yep.
We talked earlier about the psychic stuff, and like there's ways to interpret it. I think the psychic stuff, her having these pulls that she can't explain, it's the devil pulling her towards stuff.
That's my interpretation of it as well, is that it's the devil is having fun toying with her, and so it's kind of giving her these little images and clues to keep her going. And she does exactly what he wants at every turn, Yeah,
it's giving devoted follower.
It's serving.
It's serving. Slay.
But so Longlegs is a Satan worshiper who, does this.
He's just joking around.
He's just a fun little guy.
I think you can definitely see scenes, especially once we get more involved with Longlegs, like getting to see where like Longlegs is and everything, their home base of operation.
Yeah.
I think you can definitely see some of the influences of like Silence of the Lambs, specifically. What's his name? The
Buffalo Bill.
Buffalo Bill, yes. The whole basement area is very reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of this like where Longlegs sleep is just like a weird mattress on the floor
with like some rock posters above his bed and stuff. And he does kind of have this like glam, like aged glam rocker, botched by plastic surgery sort of look to him, which I mean, that's definitely intentional. There's a lot of, they don't necessarily go into exactly who he is and what his background is, but his environment and his appearance provides a lot of storytelling about what kind of person he was before he fell in with the devil.
Yeah. I will say, I think they do a pretty good job of like keeping him obscured and hidden for a good run of the movie.
Yep.
And I think no matter the version of this movie that you would put out, I think there isn't a version where you don't reveal what he looks like. I think you have to do that. To me, it wasn't like the biggest payoff in the world. Yeah. I feel like there was a lot of hype around this movie of that it's really, really scary and that like Nicolas Cage looks fucked up in this. And when I got the reveal of it, I was like, I mean, it looks weird. Yeah. But it wasn't like,
Look, he kind of looked like, this is some topical political humor for you all today.
Oh boy.
Kind of looked like Marjorie Taylor Greene in white face paint.
I can kind of see it, like a really puffed up.
Yeah.
I think, because we've seen this, it's going on like 2 weeks now, but the longer I've sat with it, I think you get more out of his look being scary if uncanny valley stuff is effective on you.
I think so.
I don't think it's particularly effective on me. So like I saw it and I can understand that it's weird and that if you were actually confronted by like anybody who looked like Nicolas Cage's character in this movie and acted like that, you would be freaked out.
For sure.
But I don't think he's just inherently terrifying looking.
Yeah, it's tough because in some ways them leaving him like kind of slightly obscured and like out of frame and out of focus and stuff builds the anticipation of what he's gonna look like, and then you have really high expectations, so that's kind of
works against it, right? Like because when you do get the reveal, you're like, oh, he kind of just looks like a normal guy.
Right.
I mean, he's botched plastic surgery in the face looking normal guy. He's like really puffy and he doesn't look normal, quote unquote, but like he's not. When he drops down in frame when we first see him, the it's so quick, and the way that it's filmed, it almost makes it look like his eyes are like hollowed out. They're these big like dark circles around where his eyes are. But then when you get the reveal of what he looks like, he doesn't look like that. Yeah. And so he's not like monstrous looking. And I think one big problem with this movie specifically, and again, it's a good movie, you should go watch it, is that there was a specific marketing campaign where they were like, this is the heartbeat of Maika and Monroe seeing Nicolas Cage in makeup for the first time. Yeah. And there's a interrogation scene where she does get to see him and talk with him and everything like that. And this is the scene that they're talking about in the movie when she sees it. And I think we get to see him before this. A little bit before, but not long before. It's not long before. It's basically
when, before he gets taken in, because he like walks to that bus station and we get a shot of him like standing at the bus station with his 2 suitcases and stuff. Or no, I say bus station. It was more like a bus stop. Yeah. We got to look at him there, and then you really get to spend time looking at him during that interrogation scene.
And it's built up that it's going to be horrifying, and I don't think the look is horrifying. It's Nicolas Cage.
It's the behavior.
Acting that way that is actually terrifying, specifically in that interrogation scene. Yeah. There are a couple other scenes that we get where they are kind of funny, especially not in context. They're very funny.
If you've been on TikTok in the last 2 weeks, I'm sure you've heard,
"Let me in now, and it'll be nice."
He's very theatrical. He does these, I think the thing about it is that everything that he does, it just always makes you uncomfortable. Like,
because it's a weird thing to do.
He's doing this like scream sing that's too loud. It's not appropriate to the moment. It's like, and that's what's so alarming, is that the behavior is just so like unhinged and out of touch with what's going on.
The scene where he's driving after the convenience store and the little girl in there behind the counter. It's like, Dad, that weird guy's here again, which to me was the most realistic thing of this entire movie.
Customer service mood. That's just a Tuesday when you work retail. Yeah.
I love that scene so much because it establishes that this is not the first time he's been in here.
Yes.
And that when he does come in here, he does act weird to her specifically. But she's also not fazed by it. She's just like, I'm going to call my dad. I'm not, like, I can't deal with this.
Stop being weird. Yeah.
I'm going to flip through my like Kids' Choice Award magazine or whatever and call my dad over here. But anyway, when he's driving back, there's this scene where as he's driving, he's just, Mommy! Daddy! Help! It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's convinced me that Osgood Perkins gave Nick Cage the script and said, hey, go full Nick Cage on this one. And he was like,
well, Nick Cage was a producer. So,
true. That's true.
The behavior is what's so alarming. The way that he talks, he speaks sort of in code and riddles and things.
Yeah. I love me a villain that speaks in riddles.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because when you think back on some of the things that he says, it all makes sense.
Oh yeah.
But at the time, because we don't have all the pieces yet, it sounds like gobbledygook.
Yeah.
You know, that interrogation scene is, I would say, it's definitely a highlight of the film. This tense conversation between Maika Monroe and Nicolas Cage, and they're both just giving it their all.
Yeah.
Of course, it ends in one of the more disturbing moments of the film. Yeah. Where once Longlegs has basically said what he needed to say and had the conversation he wanted to have, he just says...
He said, I'm out.
He said, Hail Satan, and then he starts bashing his face in.
Slamming his head into the table.
And dies from it, and we see multiple, like, cut shots of...
He fully breaks
like,
off
carnage.
His nose where you can see the bone of the skull.
Yeah, it's awful.
Beneath, and there's just a huge pool of blood, and he kills himself from it.
Terrible.
Crazy.
And another thing we didn't really mention is that this movie occurs in 3 acts. So that is sort of the conclusion of the second act. Yeah. So we really only get to see Longlegs and like spend a lot of time with Longlegs in the first 2 acts. And then in the third act, he's kind of absent, and it shifts because that's as we start to get more understanding that this is supernatural. Yeah. So it goes from Longlegs being the villain to really like Satan or evil itself being the villain, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which is really fascinating, and we start to get more backstory as to like how he was able to do these murders. I love a creepy doll, and this movie's chock full of them. That's part of the whole thing. As we learn more about Longlegs, we learn that he was like this doll maker and was very skilled at making these like very realistic looking dolls, and that is part of his whole shtick to get access.
Well, it's
to the
Longlegs, it's the devil, and there's somebody else. There's an person
accomplice
helping, and they don't know who this person is.
Yeah, they start to put together that there must be an accomplice.
Well, Lee does. Nobody else really believes that there's a second person. Yeah, and when Longlegs kills himself on the table, Agent Carter is pissed because they had him and they could have, prosecuted him for this, and now they can't do anything because he's dead. Right. And he didn't believe that there was an accomplice to this or anything like that, and so now he's pissed, and now Lee's trying to figure out, I gotta figure out who's helping.
And Longlegs had kind of nudged her in the right direction, because something that he said in the interview when she's asking, like, who's helping you, is he's like, you should ask your mommy, or, something like that. We keep getting these hints that, like, the mom knows something or, has something or whatever. Because there's other moments, like earlier in the film, Lee learns through Agent Carter that a police report was made on her 9th birthday by her mom saying that there was an intruder, but then she later, like, what do you call that? Withdrew the statement. Recanted, yeah. And didn't pursue it further. And Lee has no memory of this. So she's like kind of having this thing with her mom, trying to figure out, like, so what do you know? What happened? But the mom is clearly mentally ill, very religious,
Yeah, the framing we get when Lee visits her mom, because like a lot of this is phone calls and stuff with her mom beforehand, and you can tell like there's some kind of strained relationship before we actually go see her. But when she goes, then we see she's like a hoarder. She's quote unquote religious nut. You know, like when they're talking on the phone, she's like, "Did you say your prayers?" And
your prayers protect you.
Yeah, prayers protect you and all that. But then it starts to get weird because like when Lee shows up at her mom's house to like talk with her about stuff, there's kind of an agenda there. Obviously, she wants to talk to her mom about, you know, like what was this police report, and her mom tells her that she forgot. Yeah. Intentionally, she's like, I put it out of my mind because I didn't want to remember anything like that. But then there's like other weird stuff. So like Lee starts to make her some food, and then she sees this door, and there's like a big key ring thing with a bunch of keys or whatever next to the door, and Lee goes to like touch it, and then her mom calls out from the other room at the perfect moment to like stop her from going, you know, to go through this. It's all very weird. There's like a lot of stuff going on, and the whole time you're, as the audience, like trying to be like, what is all of this
what is
like,
it?
mean?
And they're extremely isolated. There's never any mention of who Lee's father is, and they don't have... They seemingly don't have like friends, family, whatever. So you can tell that it was kind of an odd upbringing, which may explain why she behaves the way she does. Yeah. The mom's performance was also really good to me. I thought she really did that effectively. Yeah.
There was towards the end of the movie, when we were in the theater, got the biggest like reaction, I think, of the audience in terms of like scary stuff. So again, spoiler stuff, but we're deep in it now.
Big spoilers.
Mom's in on it. She's the accomplice. A little complicated as to like why basically Longlegs showed up. We find out that scene at the very beginning with the little girl was Lee, and this is what she was talking about by like blocking it out of her mind and trying to forget this. Longlegs shows up, and that's also the scene where he does the "let me in now" thing. Because her mom tells Longlegs to leave them alone. And he does that little number, and then later, I guess he comes back and like ties her up and is like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Yeah. Or you can help me. Right. And Satan.
And your daughter will be fine.
And your daughter will be fine. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna kill her. Because her mom wants to protect her, she agrees to do this. And then we start to find out that Longlegs would make the doll.
And he would make the doll to look like the child.
The child in the house. Family. And this has to do with birthdays. Lee's birthday is coming up.
It's a 9-year-old daughter who has a birthday on the 14th.
And they are always killed within like 6 days.
On either side.
Yeah. And it seems weird, but earlier in the movie, Lee figures out that it's actually a pattern, and it makes an occult symbol.
This like kind of upside down triangle
when you track out all the dates that they were killed on. So it's very intentional. He makes the doll. The doll looks like the girl from the family. The mom poses as somebody from the church,
she's in like a nun's
outfit. Shows up at the house and says, "Congratulations, you won a gift from the church." They let her in. Secretly within the doll is Satan. He's hiding in the doll. There's this whole thing with eyes. If you don't like eyes in this movie, probably don't watch this one. There's not like like a lot. Nobody like loses an eyeball or anything.
There's just
bloody,
creepy eye
but
stuff.
There's just creepy eye stuff. But Satan's hiding within the doll so that he can kind of have things play out and witness them how he wants them to play out. But this is how Longlegs doesn't actually have to be there. She drops the thing off, and then nobody ever sees her again or knows her. And then the family ends up, doing the murder-suicide stuff.
They basically are influenced by Satan to where the dad kills the spouse, the children, and then himself. Yeah. And then
the doll gets taken back out of the house, and then there's this big mystery.
And no one knows.
Yeah, and nobody knows.
Yeah.
We do find out Lee had a doll made of her, and the mom ends up shooting it.
Yeah, one of the more shocking moments in the film was after Longlegs kills himself, and she's gonna follow up on the lead to go talk to her mom. So her and another FBI agent go to the house.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm gonna go inside alone. Like, I think that'll be better. So the agent hangs out in the car.
And this is the scene that got the big reaction.
Yes. And as Lee is kind of walking through the house trying to find her mom, she enters this like one room that has a window to see out into the driveway area, and she watches in horror as she's helpless to do anything as her mom, dressed as a nun.
Yeah, she's at the back of the car where the FBI agent is still sitting in the driver's seat, and we see her like almost glide around the car silently slowly, and then raise up a shotgun and just
murder
blast this woman.
And then Lee's like freaking out and goes to confront her, and when she does eventually find her mom still has the shotgun but is now pointing it at this doll of Lee. And does end up shooting the doll, which releases there's these weird metal hollow balls that are inside kind of where the brain would be for the doll, and when they break, this like black mist comes out of it. Yeah. And when this happens, it basically incapacitates Lee. Right. We don't know exactly. It's sort of left mysterious what exactly that connection is, but it seems to have something to do with Satan's connection with Lee, and then also the memory.
Yeah, because this is when she kind of remembers everything, is when that thing breaks.
It sort of forces her.
And then the final confrontation is Lee wakes up. She's been taken down into the basement of the house, and this is the reveal. That's where Longlegs was living. It's the same basement. Yeah, because
we recognize the basement
you recognize
now.
The space. And then she rushes over to Agent Carter's house, because earlier in the movie, it was established that their daughter was about to have a birthday. And so she goes over there, and her mom is already there with the doll inside.
With the doll of the daughter.
And she's just sitting there calmly going about the plan.
Yep.
And we kind of get to witness firsthand what that looks like.
And the behavior is bizarre. Like, as soon as weird. Lee gets to the door, you know immediately that something's not right, because Agent Carter and his wife are like being super smiley, but like also tense and like threatening.
And Lee is disheveled. She does not look great.
Right.
And she's active, like she's wielding her service weapon. She's like
got her weapon pointed. Yeah. And they're just like, come on in.
Everything's great.
Time for the birthday party.
It's also weird because it's a birthday party for like a 9-year-old girl, so you would imagine there would be other people there, and there's no one there.
It's just the two of them, the daughter, and then Lee's mom.
Yeah. And so she goes in, and it's so weird because they're like sitting on the couch, and like Agent Carter is like saying stuff, and then the wife will say something, and then he lashes out like he's pissed.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments, it was so unsettling, the acting, the writing, it was just so beautiful, was Agent Carter saying, well, it's time to cut the birthday cake, so we need to go into the kitchen. And the wife says, like, really? And he says, yes. And then she looks at Lee and says, I'll be right back. And then Agent Carter comes in and says, no, I'll be right back. You'll still be in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh.
It's so fucked up.
You know that he's going to kill her.
Yeah, and the mom is sitting there on like another couch, and she tells Lee, she's like, she's already dead.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing you can do that's going to stop this.
It's like preordained.
Yeah,
you know?
she's already dead.
Yeah.
So, and it's so fucked because you don't see him kill her. Mm-hmm. You hear it though.
Yep.
In the other room when they go to the kitchen, and then he comes back and he's like all bloody and he's got the knife and he starts to come at her. She ends up shooting him to, stop him and kill him and everything, and then she ends up shooting her own mom.
Yeah, because the mom is like, you're fucking this up. Yeah, like, you can't
do this. And then as like a last thing, she aims the gun at the doll and is going to like break the doll to try to break the spell on the daughter and everything. And the gun won't fire.
Yeah, or it's out of bullets.
It's something.
Unclear. It's some kind of divine intervention happens where she can't do anything to the doll.
Yep. And then she leaves and the movie kind of ends.
Yeah. And I think that the ending is up to interpretation. I've seen some people say that this whole process meant that Lee was now going to be like, kind of like the torch was passing to Lee, to either be like the next Longlegs or the next Ruth in terms of her role for Satan.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen, and this is what the director has said, so I guess you could say this is the more canonical ending, is that this was actually all just like Satan's final flourish and tada, and like Lee's story with Satan is done now because he got what he wanted out of her. He got to like completely destroy her, have her kill her mother, have her kill her mentor who's like her, you know, father figure. So he got his satisfaction out of her, and now she's done.
Yeah,
you know?
Which when we finished the movie, we were talking about it before we left to go home, and we were talking about interpretations of it. I think that's really close to the interpretation I had out of it. Like, the reason she couldn't shoot the doll was that, like, all of this is what Satan wanted.
Right.
He set up these deals with Longlegs, with her mom, and he's not going to honor any of that. He's a trickster, right? Like, he protected her. That doesn't mean you're going to get out of this scot-free.
Right.
And yes, it means she's not dead, which is what the mom wanted in that moment, was for her to like not be, you know, killed and protect her through life.
But
and
she's
everything
in her
like
own
that.
hell now.
But she became an adult, so she didn't need protecting anymore. And what better way to like finally enact on all of that than to have everything around her life like fully crumble and fall. So very fascinating stuff. And I mean, there's a lot. This is a strongly aesthetic movie. There's a lot of symbolism. There are a lot of little Easter eggs. One thing that I did just want to point out, because it kind of like blew my mind when I was thinking back on it, is way earlier in the movie, right after the opening scene, when the FBI is doing like a test on her to try to, I guess, confirm if she's psychic or whatever. And they're showing her a series of images, and she's supposed to do like word association and say the first thing that comes to mind. And one of the images that they flash kind of in the middle is an upside down triangle, and Lee says father, and then it moves on. Oh, I didn't even catch that. That's good.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's so creepy because, again, there's different ways you could interpret that. You could look at it as like Longlegs in some ways kind of being a father figure to her because he was down in the basement all those years. She just couldn't remember that. You could also look at it as being kind of like the child, so to speak, of Satan, not in like a literal way, but in more of a metaphorical way. It's creepy. Yeah,
the movie is very creepy. It's not the scariest thing I've ever seen, but it is creepy. Let's do a rating.
Yeah.
Real quick.
I thought it was pretty scary. I gave it a 7.5 in terms of scares, because obviously it has some jump scares which are super effective on me, but also like there was never a release from the tension for me. Like I was just tense the whole time, so I thought it was pretty effective. Yeah. But anyway, that makes my overall average for Longlegs an 8.4.
Yeah, for me, I marked it as a 6 for scares. I thought the performances were easily the best part of this movie, with visuals being like right behind it. It's very effective in like the framing and how they film it, and you know, changing of aspect ratios and all this stuff. Very, very good. But I was a little bit lower than you. I landed at a 7.5 for it, but it brings our combined average to an even 8. Yep. Which I think is really good. I think it's a little bit... An 8 is, I think, a little bit higher than, like, the IMDb ratings. But it is overall, like, favorable for critics, you know, going to see this.
And I will say this movie appears so far, now that there's been a couple weeks for people to see it and put their opinions out, it does seem to be a little bit of a love it or hate it type movie. Yeah. You know, there are a lot of people who've just said, it didn't work on me, I didn't find it scary, didn't find it disturbing. That's just kind of how it's going to be sometimes, because not everything works for every person. Yeah. But it seems like the people who like it really like it. Almost kind of reminds me of like Skinamarink.
I was gonna say,
where
this is our Skinamarink.
Yeah, we like I get this one, and I will go to bat for Longlegs, but Skinamarink is trash.
We're gonna have to do an episode on that now.
Yeah,
which means I gotta watch it again.
I'm not.
That'll be the third time for me.
I don't need to watch it again. I can just close my eyes and think about a door, and then I saw the movie. It's the LaCroix of horror.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Lowest rated episode of this podcast
Yeah,
is because
it gets a 0.
In the Longlegs episode, Hannah said, Skinamarink is the LaCroix of horror. People come out of the woodwork being like, I'm gonna get
so much hate mail. I know that there are people who listen to this podcast who really like Skinamarink, and you know what? To each their own. I'm glad that it did something to you.
You put that a lot nicer than I would, because whenever people disagree with me on things like that, I'm saying, it's okay to be wrong sometimes.
No, it's just, I think this is exactly the point, is that just like with Skinamarink, where it seemed like for some people it hit that nerve.
Yeah.
And for me, it just never hit that nerve.
Yeah.
But Longlegs did.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was very effective on me. I loved the aesthetics. I loved the costuming, the lighting, the sound design, all, like, it was, to me, it was all really, really good. Yeah. Honestly, my only major criticism of it, again, doesn't invalidate the film or make it a bad film, but my only criticism is I kind of wish that with the supernatural stuff and with the explanations, we'd either gotten a little bit more or gotten less.
A little bit less, yeah. I agree. The towards the end of this movie, we do get the whole thing with the black ball and the mist and everything like that. The dolls are a little... It feels like a thought not fully complete.
Yeah. And I think it's tough because we get some things that are like fully spelled out for us of like what Ruth was doing and how these murders were happening and blah, blah, blah. But then other things are just kind of left open to interpretation. Mm-hmm. Or it's a bit confusing what the reasoning might be. Yeah. So I kind of wish if they did want to explain it to us and really like solve the mystery, which I can, there's definitely something to that. I think that can be powerful. I wish they had clarified a little bit more. Yeah. Or I wish they had pulled back and kind of obfuscated some
oh god, I can't, we can't talk.
I'm breaking.
Obfuscated.
Yes, that.
Gee, oh my god.
I wish that they had sort of pulled back more and left more of it open to interpretation, so that way we could just kind of stew in, you know, what was the truth. And
there is something to leaving a lot of stuff up to like interpretation and to debating it, like debating it after the movie ends, you know. I think there are other movies that do that specifically, like a little bit better, but other than that, I think it was a really good movie. I will say, if you have seen like the marketing stuff for this movie, I think that also kind of dings it a little bit. Like I think specifically, like I mentioned before, the whole heartbeat thing or whatever, I think that's overhyped. And I do think that sets up expectations that the movie's never gonna pay off. They
really went for this kind of whole like guerrilla marketing thing. It very much gives Blair Witch Project in the 90s. They had a phone line that you could call, and it was this like creepy Nick Cage talking to you, all breathy. They had a website for the birthday murders. They had, you know, social media posts that were going up in code, and people were trying to figure out what it said. And that stuff is all very effective, and it worked. I mean, it got people in the seats.
Exactly.
But in some ways, I think it can be a disservice because you go in, you know, the entire narrative around this movie is scariest movie I've ever seen. Yep. Scariest movie of the year. Yeah. And I just think that's such a hard thing to say because it creates an expectation.
It does, which I think leads to this idea that you're going to go in and you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, right? Because the expectation is this is going to be the scariest movie you've ever seen. It's not for, I think, either one of us.
No, I wouldn't say it's the scariest movie I've ever seen. It was one of the more tense and like skin crawly.
Sure. But I guess my point is that you and I both liked it, and it's still not the scariest movie we've ever seen. So imagine people who don't like it and we're also sold. It's going to be the scariest movie you've ever seen.
And that's the risk that you take with this kind of marketing, you know, because it creates expectations that creates more avenues for failure and disappointment. I think that it is a good movie, and I feel like it's, you know, I don't necessarily think it's like overhyped. I think it's just it was a strategic marketing choice that got people in the seats.
My favorite bit of like marketing that I saw for this was after we had seen it. Somebody had sent me a screenshot that they had seen on like Facebook, and it said #1 movie in the US, and then there was a little asterisk, and right below that, in like virtually the smallest print they could afford to put on there, said after Despicable Me 4. Which was the funniest shit I've like ever seen in my life.
Because we talked about this too. They could have solved it by just saying #1 horror.
Yeah, #1 horror movie would have been fine, but they said #1 movie in the U.S. after Despicable Me. Yeah, Despicable Me 4 did do better than us, but if you don't count it,
oh my gosh,
second place is the new first place.
Yes. It's a fun one. I think it's worth a watch. I think also, while the marketing might have some issues because of the expectations it creates, I do think that if you watched any of the trailers and you liked the aesthetics of what you saw, that's pretty par for the course for what the movie is.
That is true.
That feels very connected and true to me. So I think if you watch the trailers and it intrigued you, I do think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. Also, if you want to see Nick Cage just be a weird little guy.
Which I do.
Yeah. We didn't talk about a scariest scene.
Oh, I can do mine real quick.
Yeah, do it.
Scariest scene was Kiernan Shipka.
Oh, really?
No, but I wanted to talk about that and we didn't find an opportunity.
That's true.
Favorite scene might be more accurate.
That's fair. Didn't they? I might be misremembering. Wasn't that one take or like one shot?
I think so. Yeah.
They got that in like one or whatever.
Something like that. I thought I heard. Yeah, it's a really creepy scene. Kiernan Shipka is playing a character who lives in a psychiatric facility, and she's the only survivor of Longlegs. She was at school when Longlegs, hit, so she didn't die. But she was basically like comatose for like just completely traumatized to the point where she never said or did anything. Up until Lee and Agent Carter visit the farmhouse where the murders occurred, and under the floorboards in the barn they find her doll that looks like her. And then for whatever reason, when that doll is unearthed, she kind of like comes back to life, but she's very messed up. She is talking in this way that's like really unnatural and strange, and she's very like deadpan, but the things she's saying are really disturbing. Like there's a point where she's talking about Longlegs and she's saying like, well, if he told me to kill you, I surely would, just happy as peaches to see your head go pop pop pop, like very disturbing, weird things, but she's saying it in such a flat way. Thought the performance was great. Kiernan Shipka was also in The Blackcoat's Daughter, which is the first Oz Perkins movie I saw, and was really great in that. So
nice. Yeah, it was a combination of them finding the doll, and also Longlegs went to see her, which led to one of the funnier scenes in the thing, because they're talking to like the head dude. I wanted to call him the
administrator or whatever.
And Lee's like, do you take ID for the people? And he's like, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it? And I'm like, brother. I know it's set in the 90s, but come on. Anyway, my scariest scene is it's kind of a tie. It's between when Longlegs smashes his face into the table multiple times, and when he lifts his head that one time and you can see like the bone and all that. It's just really gross. And then probably talked about it already, so I'm not gonna relitigate it, but the scene where the mom comes around the car and then shoots her, just because it's like so like when she comes into frame and she's like kind of gliding, alarming. It's alarming and weird. It's also one of the scenes when they cut back to Lee and she's like, you can see behind her, you can see the silhouette of Satan in the window behind her watching. It's creepy.
Awful.
But anyway, talk about what we're gonna watch next time.
Alrighty.
So next time we are going to watch Godzilla -1, which is another newer one, but this one's on streaming.
Okay.
So
I know nothing about this.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I don't know a ton about it. I do know that, like, from what I have heard, anybody that I know has seen it. It's like the best Godzilla movie they've ever seen. It's like the thing that people have wanted Godzilla to be for a really, really long time.
All right.
So
talking a big game here.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be really, really good.
Yeah, so we're going to do that 2 weeks from today. And of course, feel free to keep the recommendations coming, whether they are new releases or old releases that you want to hear covered on the pod. We are open to that.
Mm-hmm.
And feel free to email us those suggestions. We're firstfrightpod@gmail.com. We're also on social media. It's @firstfrightpod. We also have a Facebook page. You can look up our podcast name, Love at First Fright, to find that. I think that's all we had for today.
That is all we got.
So thanks for listening, and check back in with us in 2 weeks for Godzilla -1.
And as always, scare well. See you next time.
Cuckoo.
Oh, no.
Cuckoo.